Good morning. Just joined me this morning. Unfortunately, the Join Me app decided not to function properly. I had no microphone. Anyway, apparently it's all sorted out. And switch it on. And like all computery stuff, it worked. Okay, now this morning we're going to look at the first unit of the two units, level 4 award on internal quality assurance of the assessment process and practice. The first one is all about understanding the principles and practices of internally assuring the quality of assessment. A lot of the work you've done as an assessor will be valuable in this because you'll understand the background behind what has to occur. Internal verification generally is just one step back from assessment. It's someone else or a second pair of eyes that will look at something that's been done and make a judgment on it. Just like the assessor makes a judgment with the student or learner that he's working with of the work that they produce. It's a lot more responsibility than that. They to a call verifier, but now the internal quality assurer. It's really a management stage because a lot of the data that's produced during the process of assessment and the verification of it is fed back into management because there may be changes in policy or procedure that need to occur from the data that's presented from actually the operation that's being carried out. So, yeah, that's a fairly large responsibility. To do that, an IQA needs control of the assessors that he is working with. In other words, he shouldn't have too many assessors to work with. That's the first one. The second one is that he should be able to, from his experience, sit back and say to the assessor or a group of assessors, look, this is the qualification we're all working towards. These are the things, these are the methods of assessment we should be using to develop the students' work. Now, if you do that, you've got to hold meetings, and those are classified nowadays as standardization meetings. Standardization always sounds like too much control for me, but what it does, it makes sure of the quality of assessment, not just the quality of assessment, sorry, but the fairness of the assessment across different assessors. So the standardization meetings, I'll give you an example. What would happen is the IQA will distribute a student's work or the student's work to 2 or 3 assessors, and they will then go through the assessment process on that and see what results they come up with. This is to make sure the level at which is being assessed is uniform. To go into that, I'm now going to look at the presentation I've put together for this, and I'll put some slides, or a number of slides. I will go through those in detail, taking the first group at a time. I think there are only 14 slides in this one. A bit less than the others you've seen before with why is that well anyway. No, it's not doing it. Anyway, never mind. For the other side. No, it's not here. Screen it. We'll leave this. So the IQA process. Those key concepts and principles of internal quality assurance, allegedly. Well, the latest version anyway. That's it. I put that in a bit of a joke really, because a lot of the rules and regulations have changed or keep changing on this, and they keep changing the names of things. The name actually doing to achieve this. It was D34, then it became units B1 and B2, and now it became units 1 and 2. the meat in the sandwich is much the same. They just change things around. So, the handout, well, it's not a handout in this case. This is a presentation I used to do live. It's actually being Moodle. And of course, with the full recording of all the presentations that I make on here, will be available on Moodle. So you can repeat them, sit back, slow it down, listen to it, whatever you need to do once you start your work. So why should IQA take place? Well, I mentioned some of that in my preamble. It's got to be a process that looks at the journey of the learner from when he starts with the organisation until he achieves his award on completion of his work. It controls or makes fair the assessment process which runs beneath IQA, and it also informs management of what's actually happening. The functions of IQA, as I said, take many forms, but it will be the support of assessors and the checking or the second checking of work before it goes back to the awarding body. Because I don't all know they've got an EQA, not an external verifier. You know, he or she is now an EQA, who will then check what has been done. The way this happens changes with different awarding bodies. The definite function of the IQA should not be to reassess the work. That is the assessor's job. It will be to put remarks into the assessor with regard to thoughts of the work, and it's up to the assessor then to come back and say, no, I think that's okay, and give a reason why. Maybe the IQA has not read something properly or misunderstood something. So it's a two-way process. It's not the IQA decides what the assessors will do and sort of rules over them with a rod of iron. That's not. It's a two-way process because, as I said, nobody's infallible. So when you're going through work at a fairly fast pace, things can be missed or misunderstandings can be made. So sometimes the assessor will come back and say, no, I've got that covered here, or I've got that covered there. The IQA cycle, which we'll look at in detail a bit further down, the key concepts of IQA, the rationale for IQA, and the key principles of IQA, the roles and responsibilities of an IQA, and the regulations, policies and procedures. So why should it take place? The monitoring of the learner journey, as I said, throughout their time with the organisation, it will make sure that the learners have received a quality service and that the assessment has been correct and fair. To put in a nutshell what I've been waffling on about for the last 5 minutes. Yes, we are. Plan what will be done, from whom and when. Observe training and assessor practice. That means that periodically the IQA should watch the assessor doing an observation, for instance, and give developmental feedback if necessary. Sample assessment records, learners' work, and assessor decisions. That word sample is important. Technically, when there's not too many students and we're going through the process, probably every unit will get checked by the IQA. In the real world, when there's lots and lots of students and several assessors, the IQA couldn't possibly do all that. So what it tends to do is take a sample. So it will cover all the units of the qualification over a number of students and probably 2 or 3 assessors. Meet with learners and others, for example, witnesses, and ask how they feel the process is going, to get feedback from them. Of come to witness testimonies in a while. We'll go back to members the assessor course. Witness testimony is given by somebody that's observed the candidate or the learner doing an operation or delivering some information, and said it's okay. The IQA has to be confident that that witness understands the standard of what's got to be achieved, yeah, so that the witness is valid. Facilitate the standardisation of assessor practice. Now, I've already mentioned this. It's all about standardisation meetings to check that people are assessing the same thing the same way, in the same, and coming to the same decisions. Whole team meetings. Those are separate from standardisation meetings. Team meetings are really a chat to make sure that everybody's okay, they're coping with the work okay, they're not feeling overloaded or whatever. And again, to give support to those assessors where they need it. As an assessor, your first line your first DOS is the IQA. If you're not sure about something, or you're not sure how to go about something, or how to what's the best sort of assessment for a preparation, it's to go back and speak to your IQA, who will then come up with, the result that you want. Sometimes, of course, and I've experienced this as an internal verifier, you'll come up against something and think, I'm not sure. It happened to me once only, and it was an experienced assessor that came to me. This is why I was, concerned, and I thought to myself, no, I'm not sure about that either. And of course, it's like a stepping stone backwards. The IQA, who does he contact? He contacts the EQA of the awarding body, and they come up with a result that's required. And I will say that in this instance, the EQA was not sure either. One of the problems with that, and they had to go back to the awarding body process themselves, who then came back with an answer. But I said, you've got your path backwards whenever you talk or you need information. Always go back to your awarding body. I've put down on here what I've already said. Again, internal verification was the previous term for the monitoring of assessment. However, IQA monitors the whole process from when a learner commences they leave, also have an input into the management strategy. Uphold credibility of the qualification or what is being assessed of the whole organisation. That's the credibility. If people were just handing diplomas and certificates left, right, and centre and saying, look how good we are, without any check on the credibility of those certifications, then it would actually destroy the whole ethos of learning and achieving. To ensure quality throughout the learner journey, to ensure accuracy and consistency of decisions, manage risk, identify issues and trends, and support and develop assessors. I'll come back to that managed risk. This is part of the story I told about going back to the awarding body, is managing a risk. It became a risk because the assessor wasn't sure the best method of assessment. I myself wasn't 100% sure, and the EQA again had to go back to his body and get a decision from them. Other risks are learner drop-off. If there's danger of losing students, there must be a reason for that usually. It may be internally, it may be something external that's got absolutely nothing to do with the organisation, but if it's a risk, it needs to be managed. Other risks are the assessors themselves. Have they sufficient training to do the job? Have they experienced to be a number of training under the wing, if you like, on assessment processes? I mean, at one stage, I can remember as an assessor with one college, I won't mention who it was, but I ended up with 53 students under assessment at level 3. And these were mostly practical qualifications, which means a lot of it had to be observation in the workplace. Consequently, I was rushed off my feet. And it was only when I turned back and said to my IQA, I'm missing things. Things are not being carried out properly. I've too much on. It's taking all my time and more besides. And I'm behind with lots of assessments. At that point, the college decided we needed an extra assessor and got me a colleague to work with me. But it wasn't long because the guy that came was good. He'd got some experience as an assessor, as well as practically found on the qualification. And it wasn't long before, instead of having 20-something each, we were both back up to over 40. And to give you some idea, there's been some sort of correlation of numbers on this. And if practical assessment is being carried out, the optimum figure is round about 40, no more than 40 students or learners under one assessor. If it's an academic-based qualification, that could be more. I wouldn't recommend it, but the amount of travelling and moving about from place to place doesn't actually occur because, of course, work can be sent in electronically, just like yours does, and be assessed and submitted the same way. So that cuts down the amount of time spent actually going out to places to actually do the assessments. Fairness, yeah, come back to this. If there was no external verification or formation taken by learners, there has to be a system of monitoring the performance of the assessors. If not, assessors might make incorrect judgments or pass someone who hadn't met the requirements because they were biased or missed them or didn't understand them or unsure of the standards themselves, coming back to what I said previously. This does occur. Under pressure, people make mistakes, and it needs that second line of defence, if you like, to make sure the system of monitoring performance is in place. Assessment and AQA systems should be monitored and evaluated continuously to identify any actions for improvement, or indeed changes to organisational policy, which should then be implemented. I'd say that with tongue in cheek. Quite often, I have been in a position with managements who, although they're managing a training organisation, do not fully understand the processes that need to be carried out. And it's sometimes a bit of a struggle to get them to understand what they need to do. With others, it's great. You just tell them, look, we've got found this problem, that needs to be done, or that needs to be done. Okay, leave it with us, we'll sort it out. Others tend to argue from a point of understanding the problem. Also, we're going to include, as ever, everybody has to do CPD, even I do CPD now, on keeping myself up to date with all the practices. In this small presentation that we've got here now together is part of my CPD, going through and looking at the updates that's taken place and what needs to be done. According to one of the external verifiers, or EQAs from ATHE awarded body, they're going through the same process. Nice to know. Quick one of the IQA cycle. Identify the product or service, what is to be assessed, plan it, carry out the assessment, decisions and feedback, evaluation. Yeah. Again, once the evaluation has been complete, do we need to change anything, or is it okay? This needs to be done where several qualifications are being verified within an organisation, because there will be differences to the way the assessment is planned, the IQA is planned, and the feedback that comes will be different as well, depending on the qualification that's being taken place. But that cycle will occur whichever qualification is being taken. That process will be gone through. Policies. Depending on the subject you'll internally quality assure, you will usually follow that cycle. Cycle will continue to ensure that the assessment process is constantly monitored and improved. Records of all activities must be maintained throughout to satisfy your organisation, the regulatory authorities, and the one organisation. Now, this is different of recording. What I tend to do as IQA is put together a sampling plan over a 3-month period, so that I will sample so many on different qualifications or within that 3-month period, and go through the cycle with those students. I will then do a further cycle for the next 3 months after that, and then a further cycle for the next 3 months after that. I do them in 3 months because with the number of students we've got, that tends to be the optimum time for me to be able to get everything done and to make sure that I've got sufficient samples to make sure that everything is being done correctly. Looking at what's going to be assessed and why, our learners working towards qualification, our standards are being this thing is joining me. It's not very good. No. And staff being observed in the job role and the criteria will need to be clear. Any of the units from qualification, learning objectives or aspects of a job specification or qualification. Learners should be allocated to assessors in a fair way. For example, according to location, experience and workload. This is harking back to what I was saying previously, to make sure that the assessors are not overstressed in the number of students they've got. The learners should be allocated in a fair way. It depends also on the assessor's needs analysis. If it's a new assessor, obviously he's got to have a small workload and needs to be checked probably. Well, I will put this up on here. I've not got one with me at the minute, but I will put one in onto the Moodle platform for you. It is a strategy, an IQA strategy, and this says what you will do and when. It's how it will operate, basically. I don't know why I didn't put that in before. It's only have to read that bit now that I've picked that up. Again, according to experience on our and workload and where they are as well. If they've got, as I said, if they're going to be moving about a lot from place to place, if they do a lot of work with employers or that sort of thing, and you're going out to employers, then obviously the workload needs to be reduced or travelling and moving around. Key concepts include accountability. Very much you're accountable for much of what goes on in the whole operation. This is why I said it is a management process, and this is why it's a level 4. Even though it's only 2 units, it's actually a level 4 qualification in its own right. Again, assessment strategies. There it is again. I haven't put that in, I will do. Risk factors, evaluations, interim or summative sampling. Well, that's slightly different now. We now have formative sampling. We used to have formative sampling, which was initial assessment and so forth. Then interim sampling, which was during the process of assessment, not before it's complete, and then summative at the end. What we tend to do is we have a continuing formative assessment. This may be in the terms of verbal information recorded. It may be in the form of written or documented work where students sent in work. It's been formatively assessed and then sent back for rework or revisions to be added or whatever, so that it's a clear indication of feedback to the learner. Transparency. Now that's important. It's got to be seen to be working by everybody. It's not just a process that you carry out separate from everybody else. It's got to be very clear what your operation is and what you do. Having a reason, a rationale, a reason to be. And again, the accountability bit is being accountable to your organisation, but also to the external body. You are the link between the awarding body and the organisation, so you're accountable to both. In conclusion, I've took conclusion on it, we're not quite finished yet. The slides you have just seen are the basis on which you build your response to the various questions posed in each element of the unit. Your answers may differ slightly according to the practice and policies within the school or college in which you work. IQA today has a central role in the way an organisation operates. It's important to remember then that the importance of maintaining records both hard copy and electronic. You are also the main link between your college and awarding bodies. Your relationship with them becomes more important if your organisation is small, and that body or bodies will be a solid source of support to your role. EQAs can answer any questions you may have and help and advise you on questions within your own school or college. Tap evidence for your portfolio. Your evidence for this will be made up of examples of documents you use within your school or your college. These will be explained by your narrative of their purpose and how they are used, further supported by copies of your school policies, procedures where relevant. That actually concludes the first part of the IQA process. I'll close that down. I just wanted to look at one more thing before we go. Here we are. Here we are. Okay. Something on the last call, but there's been lots of difficulty with the system. Again, a lot of this will say refer to the PowerPoint slides for the main points to enlarge on. Refer to the PowerPoint slides for the main points to enlarge on, but also include the procedures required by your school. an outline of your evaluation around your skills processes, and a copy of 2.2, copy of your IQA sampling plan. I will put on to Moodle some sampling plans, if you like, and also I'll make sure that you've got a copy of the strategy. Yeah. Again, summarise the preparation that needs to be made for AQA, including information collection, communications, administrative arrangements and resources. This is the PowerPoint slide, but also use your software top rates within your organisation. Different techniques for sampling, and again, there will be a further presentation which will cover some of those. Okay. And please do use in the quality of assessment process. Yeah. That is all I wanted to cover today. We'll cover some more of this, come back actually to, and thank you all for listening. This has been recorded and will be on Moodle to come back to. Thanks again.